Thanks, Drew, and thanks everyone for sticking around during lunch. We'll try to make it worth your while. We have a lot to cover and not that much time, so in case you haven't heard of any of the companies on the panel today, we'll just kind of quickly go up and down, talk about what we do, and then we'll get into why the web needs a taste graph, who's doing it well, who's thinking about it the right way, and then what our own companies are doing to solve the problem. So my name's Mark RUXIN. I run a company called TASTEMAKERx. We're still in private beta, and we're a mobile social music game that will surface vertical music trends and people to the world. So for anyone that doesn't have the application, you can download it using the promo code GRINES right now. So go to tastemakerx.com and download the app, and I'll kick it over to Noah.
Hi, Noah BRIER. I run a company called PERCOLATE. PERCOLATE is a tool, a platform that helps brands create content at scale, essentially. I'll talk a little more about how we do it, probably where we're going, but we work with mostly Fortune 500 brands like GE, American Express, MasterCard, helping them push content to Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and .coms.
Hi, I'm Mark Green. I'm with MEEBO, and we syndicate a service to about 8,000 websites to deliver more customized programming for their users. And we are used by people like Hearst and Slate and AppNation, serve about 180 million people a month.
I'm MCLAUGHLIN. I'm since December VP at TUMBLR. I'm responsible for the business side. I think it's not product and engineering. And happy to be here.
Great, thanks. Well, so let's dig into it. I had this revelation a couple of years ago, and when the people in the room, and I think when most people go to Facebook, or went to Facebook over the past 5 or 6 years, they were asked to fill out a bunch of fields, of which they filled out some and some they didn't, but they say things like, what's your favorite band, and what's your favorite record, and if you bother to fill out those fields, you probably haven't updated them ever since. So what Facebook knows about you as a person is distributed across a whole bunch of different things that you put out there. And I think the same goes true with Twitter and search engines. So surfacing verticalization and vertical trends is really hard. So why don't we just spend a couple minutes talking about what the big platforms are doing to address personal taste, and then we can talk a little bit about the new companies that are trying to solve that problem, and then we'll get into what we do. So Andrew, talk about Facebook and Twitter and Google as antidotes to personal taste or interest.
All right, so here's what this looks like from where I sit at TUMBLR. So the Facebook social graph is composed of connections between people primarily who know each other in the real world. So Facebook is relentlessly connecting your activities to your identity, and your identity tends to map pretty close. On Facebook, tends to map pretty closely to the links and connections that you have in the real world: coworkers, family, friends, schoolmates, neighbors, and that sort of thing. Tumblr, just to go to a contrast, doesn't require any kind of real-world identity. And what that means is that our social graph tends to consist of connections between people built on interest. So everything that happens on Tumblr is public, so you can find blogs that you want to follow them, and that tends to be an expression of interest. You follow somebody not because you know them already, indeed you probably don't even know who they are, but you follow them because you're interested in them. And so the question about taste is from where we are a different set of signals. So on Tumblr, taste is expressed through likes, reblogs, and to a lesser extent follows. And the graph that is composed of those likes and reblogs is sort of what we think about as a taste graph. Facebook's is much harder to parse because it is you are less likely to like things that you like and more likely to like people that you know and things that the people that you know do. And so Twitter sort of falls somewhere in between, probably a little closer to the Tumblr side of things than Facebook. And Google's is maybe even beyond Facebook. Google's whole approach to connections between people and graphing seems like it's somehow less connected to the real world, a little bit more like Twitter in that sense, less useful even, and I say this as a former Googler, I don't mean this as like a condemnation, but like when you try to understand what knowledge and wisdom you can gain out of Google's social graph for understanding taste, preferences, and opinions, it seems to be even less useful because it's more chaotic and the population of users is so much smaller, and it's hard to figure out what you can learn from that. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
I would like to take the opposite tact. So I mean, clearly I would agree with people who say Facebook has the biggest sort of interest graph with all the like data. But it's not the size of your interest database that matters, it's what you do with it. And what they don't have is situational times to deliver on a specific person's intent. Because people are going to Facebook for other things other than buying products or putting themselves in a position to get a suggestion that might have commercial value. Google does. So search, clearly, they can correlate interests between people who don't know each other. That's an interest graph. And what they can do is use that to tune, and they do use that to tune search results and maps on mobile devices. So I think Google is sort of counted out in a lot of these graph conversations, but unfairly so, because they can make it work for real value for users in a way that many of the other services can't.
I think to build on that, I think the opportunity for those other services though is probably even bigger than Google's in that you go to Google with the intent, right? And intent certainly has value, and the harvesting of intent has value. We've seen Cap of Google as proof of that. But most advertising spend is still spent creating intent, not harvesting it. And to me, that's the opportunity of the interest graph, and that's where the big opportunity for Twitter and Tumblr. And I think Facebook's going to do everything they can to make that interest graph much more relevant. They're already trying to get you to sort of add more things and update the interest graph you built out the first time you built it. But being able to actually, with some accuracy, predict things people will be interested in is where the majority of spend still is.
I guess I would just, it's an ancillary point, but I think the verticalization of interest is the web needs filters more now than ever before, and I think to try to distill interest signals out of these big platforms is hard. The fire hose is so big that if you try to follow trends or try to keep up with individual publishers, unless they're very consistent at what they publish, and which is why I think Tumblr seems closer to that. People that have Tumblr blogs typically write about the same thing as where people that publish to Facebook and Twitter are all over the board. It's lunch, it's digital marketing, it's music, etc. So I think when we look back and look at something like MySpace, that grew big quickly because it was really focused on music, and it died very quickly when it became broad. So I would guess that in order to, and I don't know, you're trying to percolate these signals up through the graph, I would guess that the verticalization of these interests becomes more relevant to the interest graph than broad platforms that surface some silvers of it personality. All right, so Pinterest, is this a for real thing? Is this an interest graph company, or is it an e-commerce business with a different approach?
I think it is for real. It's done it not via algorithms in a graph, but rather human beings just self-selecting things that they're interested in. And what they've done extraordinarily well is built a user sort of design that enables browsing of a catalog. And we haven't seen good browsing paradigms for a long time, right? We had them back in the day. If you have gray hair like me, you will have browsed the Yahoo directory at some point. But then search became the discovery paradigm, and then the feed from social services. But browsing is now, people browse on Pinterest, and they browse a catalog of evergreen stuff. I think they've clearly staked out a leadership position in that.
I think the big challenge there for them is just, text content carries more data than photo content does, or machine readable data. right? And so, you know, for them to really sort of succeed in the long run and to build it out as an interest graph, they're going to need to understand more than the title, the tags, and the link back. And so what else are they going to be able to build as far as sort of metadata around these photos to understand, okay, I've added these 16 photos of sofas. What does that really mean? I think you need more. You need to understand what is in the photo and how later that will be really interesting. You can start to look at colors in the photo and you can start to do some things there, but how do they actually sort of build that into a graph of real interests?
All right, so Andrew, brands and interests. So you guys just started your kind of initial experiment selling advertising to, as an ad guy, I always thought brands didn't have enough options to explore consumer psychographic insights as a way to find an audience, and we would instead, advertisers gravitate to massive at scale audiences. But talk about interest as a better way to convert loyal users than kind of reach and frequency and demographics.
Right, so all that I have right now is intuitions about this. If you ask me this again in a couple of months, we'll actually have been running, our promotion product, and we'll have some data to go along with it to know if our intuitions are right. But so just to lay the groundwork, so the pitch that we're making about TUMBLR for brands is that the ad unit is the blog post, so you can do anything you want, and then we'll provide you a way to promote it to people who are not already your followers. Initially, we're talking to very broad brands with a broad brand lift objective. And over the coming couple of months, we're going to start to roll out different ways to try to target based on interest. And geography, which is an obvious way to target too. But that means what we're doing right now is trying to figure out how well we can interpret the interest graph that we're sitting on and turn it into kind of actionable data that allow us to do better targeting, get better information back to the brands, and so forth. So the intuition is that there are these. Let me say it this way: the observation that underlies everything is basically what you said before, which is that we have a broad collection of vertical blogs that tend to be pretty specialized. And indeed, individuals very often will create specific blogs. Like if you're, on Tumblr and you are really interested in, selling waterfall sandwich or, text from Hillary or something, you'll just create a subsidiary blog specifically for that. It may or may not have your name attached to it. It may or may not be linked in any way publicly back to your master account, but it's there, and that's where you do that activity. You blog about that. Maybe photographs of your kids for your parents. It may be you're interested in the Hunger Games or Major League Baseball, and that's where you blog about that. So clearly, to the extent that we can interpret and understand what that interest is, and then translate that into the kinds of things that brands are interested in, we'll be able to provide really effective targeting. That's the intuition.
You guys have started to talk to advertisers too. So interest is psychographic assignment of brands to people. There's an appetite for it. How are you guys approaching it?
Yeah, we're thinking about the interest graph in a few different ways. So to start off, I think I tell this story about starting PERCOLATE largely out of getting this question from senior marketers about what they should tweet about. Not being able to figure out why I kept getting questions from senior marketers about what to tweet about, realizing that it's actually really hard to figure out what to tweet about if you don't consume anything. If you don't have an interest graph yourself, you can't create any content. That's how we all do it. The joke that Twitter is just stuff people ate for breakfast is actually really accurate. It's just stuff people ate for breakfast on the internet. And what we had for lunch on YouTube. And so to help a brand figure out how to be a publisher, how to be a content creator, we first build out an interest graph for the brand, which is based on what the brand wants to accomplish as a publisher, what the brand stands for, and actually finding sources, identifying 500, 1,000 sources that really are sort of representative of those categories, which are often across a few different verticals. We work with American Express on Open Forum, and for them, small business means one sort of very specific small business tips. It means innovation, like companies doing really interesting things that small businesses want to achieve. It means like specific stuff about SEO and how to do good Google ads and general business news, and so sort of build that interest graph based on that. So I think a big part of what we think about is how do you use that to surface content to help the brand be a better publisher, really following the footsteps of what we all do.
I think one of the most interesting things that we discovered is the appetite on the part of the agencies and brands to better understand their customer set, and then do, for want of a better term, lookalike targeting. So we've been doing interest and other targeting for about a year, but the most, I think, valuable relationships we've had with some of the consumer packaged goods brands is to actually do something we call reverse scoring, which is we take people who have self-declared to be interested in that brand, and then we score them. We basically find out, are they conservative or liberal, are they altruistic, or are they hedonistic, and various other interests that they have, which was topics and cases. And then we with them are able to form a profile of that customer in a far more detailed fashion than perhaps they had, although it fits the narrative. Obviously these guys do great work themselves. And then they're able to target people similar to that in unusual places, both within MEEBO's network or elsewhere on the web. I think that's one of the insights part of the interest graph of it is actually quite just beginning, like very interesting.
Great. Well, I think we're out of time. We could probably talk about this for hours, if not days. But it seems like the interest graph and the taste graph is topical, and I think it'll be an interesting couple of years to see whether the big platforms are able to surface interest in a much better way than they do today, or if we'll become again a massive niches, and that's where people find interest-based value. So we look forward to hearing more. Thanks a bunch. Thank you.